September 2014. A putrid odor emanating from an abandoned car led Iowa police to a gruesome discovery. A suitcase containing the decomposed remains of a brilliant Chinese student. Welcome to today's episode of True Crimes Unfold. Please note that the descriptions of events and scenarios in this video may be disturbing for some viewers. Discretion is advised. Details of the videos are taken from actual case files. Before we begin, let us know in the comments where you're listening from and the next true crime destination we should explore, and we'll make sure to add them to our list. Also, don't forget to subscribe to get new stories as soon as they're released daily. Now settle in, get ready, and let's begin. Let me tell you about the suitcase they found in Iowa. The same suitcase a young woman had packed with hopes and dreams just days earlier. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The heat in Iowa City that September was oppressive, the kind that makes the air shimmer and reality bend. That's how Officer Martinez described it. The way the heat waves rose from the asphalt of that parking lot, distorting the shape of an ordinary Toyota Corolla that had sat there, untouched, for far too long. The smell came first. In this line of work, you never forget that smell. Martinez approached the vehicle, noting the fine layer of dust that had settled on its surface, except for one area on the trunk lid, where something had recently dragged across it. But to understand the horror of what they found in that trunk, we need to go back to Dalian, China, where a little girl named Xiao Tong was born in 1994 to parents who dreamed of sending their daughter to America. They saved every yuan they could, tucking away money in an old cookie tin, building their daughter's future one sacrifice at a time. They didn't know then that every dollar they saved was buying their daughter's one-way ticket to her own murder. Xiao was brilliant, top of her class, beloved by teachers, the kind of student American universities dream about. But it was her smile that everyone remembered. The kind of smile that lights up a room and sometimes attracts the wrong kind of attention. That's where he enters our story, Li Xiangnan. Even now, years later, her friends still talk about his eyes, how they would follow Xiao across rooms, how they never seemed to blink, how they turned from adoring to possessive so slowly that no one noticed until it was too late. They came to Iowa together in 2012, her to study chemical engineering at the University of Iowa, him to study economics nearby. Young love, everyone said. But love isn't supposed to leave bruises on your soul. It's not supposed to track your every movement, count your every friend, measure your every smile. I interviewed her roommates after what happened. They told me about the strange little things. How Xiao stopped video calling her parents. How her laughter became quieter, then disappeared entirely. How Li would stand outside their apartment at night, just watching. But the detail that haunts me most, the text messages. In the final days, Xiao's best friend received messages from her phone. Messages talking about a spontaneous trip to Minnesota. But Xiao had never been spontaneous in her life. Every decision was carefully planned, every move calculated. Her friend said the messages felt wrong, like someone else was wearing Xiao's words like an ill-fitting mask. That hotel room, though, that's where everything changed. Room 217, at the extended stay on the outskirts of town. But I'm not ready to tell you about what they found behind the headboard. Not yet. Some horrors need to be approached slowly, like a darkness you have to let your eyes adjust to. What I can tell you is this: when they finally opened that trunk in the September heat, they found more than just a body in a suitcase. They found an American dream twisted into an American nightmare. They found the price of trust, measured in the weight of a young woman's final moments. You know what they say about jealousy, how it grows like mold in dark places. Room 217 at the extended stay had plenty of dark places, but I'm still not ready to tell you what happened there. First, you need to understand how Lee turned love into a prison, one locked door at a time. The signs were there from the beginning. Little things. The way he'd show up unannounced at her chemistry labs. How he'd count the male names in her phone. The way he gave her apartment address as his own. Every piece of mail, every package, every ticket becoming another link in an invisible chain. Her roommate Angela told me something interesting during the investigation. Said she'd wake up at night to find Lee sitting in their dark living room, just waiting. When asked why he was there, he'd smile that empty smile and say he was protecting Xiao. From what, he never said. But it was the cameras that really got to me. We found them later. Tiny things, barely bigger than buttons, hidden in gifts he'd given her. A teddy bear with glass eyes that saw too much. A desk clock that watched her study. A phone charger that recorded every conversation. The Chinese student community noticed things too. How Xiao stopped coming to their gatherings. How she'd check her phone every 3 minutes. Exactly 3 minutes, as if she was being timed. How she'd flinch when it buzzed. Not from fear, they said, but from certainty. The certainty of knowing who it was. Always knowing. In April 2014, 5 months before the end, Xiao's mother called the police. Not to report a crime. No, nothing so concrete. She called because her daughter had stopped smiling during their video chats. Because Xiao, who'd always been a waterfall of words, had become a desert of silence. But what crime do you report when the only evidence is a daughter's fading light? The hotel receipts tell a story of their own. Every weekend, like clockwork, always the same room, always paid in cash. To the desk clerk, they look like any other young couple. But young couples don't usually bring bleach and trash bags on romantic getaways. We found his browser history later. Searches that would make your skin crawl. How long before a missing person is reported? Decomposition rates in summer. China-US extradition treaty. Can police track deleted messages? But it was the photographs that truly showed his descent. In each one, taken over months without her knowledge, Zhao appears smaller, as if Lee's lens was somehow consuming her, bite by digital bite. The last photo, taken 3 days before she disappeared, shows only her shadow. The weekend of September 5th arrived like any other. Xiao packed her suitcase, the same suitcase that would later. But we're not there yet. Lee booked room 217 again. The desk clerk remembers them checking in. Remembers Lee's unusual request for extra towels. Remember how Xiao wouldn't meet anyone's eyes. Her last real text message, not the ones Lee would later send pretending to be her, was to her best friend. Sometimes I think he sees me even when I'm alone. She wasn't wrong. In Lee's apartment, we found journals, hundreds of pages documenting every minute of Xiao's day. What she ate, who she talked to, how many times she smiled at others. The final entry, dated September 6th, reads simply, "She's starting to understand. I can't let her leave. Now I can tell you about room 217, about what they found behind that headboard, about why the cleaning staff still refuses to enter that room alone. But first, pour yourself another drink. You're going to need it. Room 217 looked ordinary enough. That's what haunts me most. The floral wallpaper, faded from years of sunlight. The generic landscape painting above the bed. The small desk where Xiao would never finish her chemistry homework. How can something so mundane become a crime scene? The cleaning staff noticed first. Not what happened, but what didn't happen. No calls for fresh towels, no room service trays. Complete silence for 48 hours. In a hotel where every thin wall usually tells the story, room 217 kept its secrets. September 6th, 2:17 a.m. The night manager remembers hearing what she thought was furniture being moved. Later, security footage would show Lee making 3 trips to his car between 2 a.m. and dawn, each time carrying garbage bags, each time returning empty-handed. But it was behind the headboard where they found the first real evidence. You see, these budget hotels, they don't move the furniture to clean. Years of dust had collected there. Dust and other things. DNA doesn't lie. Neither does blood spatter analysis. The story it told was brutal. How he'd waited until she was asleep. How the first blow came from behind. A coward's attack. How she'd fought back. Her broken fingernails embedded in the wallpaper tell us that much. But Lee had planned too well. The towels he'd requested muffled her screams. They found her phone wedged under the radiator. The screen cracked, but still receiving his messages. Messages he sent to himself, pretending to be her. Building his alibi even as he... But I'm getting ahead of myself. The hotel's security cameras caught something else. Something the investigators almost missed. In every frame, showing Lee leaving with those garbage bags, there's a shadow in the second floor window. Room 217. A figure watching. But here's the thing. Lee was the one carrying the bags. When they finally processed the room, they found his preparations were meticulous. Plastic sheeting under the carpet. Cleaning supplies hidden in the air conditioning vent. A handwritten checklist in his precise handwriting. 3 a.m. End it. 3:30 a.m. Clean. 4 a.m. Messages. 5 a.m. Disposal. 6 a.m. Become a ghost. But Lee made mistakes. The kind of mistakes that only obsession can cause. He kept trophies. Her student ID hidden in his wallet. A lock of her hair carefully preserved in his journal. And most damning of all, a video. A video showing room 217 on September 5th. Showing Xiao, alive, reading that day's newspaper. His proof of life that would become evidence of premeditation. The suitcase, her suitcase, was his final mistake. The same one she'd packed with dreams of Minnesota. He didn't realize that expensive luggage has serial numbers. Numbers that can be traced. Numbers that led police to that parking lot where the heat made reality shimmer. But there's something else about room 217. Something the night manager mentioned that still makes my skin crawl. Even now, years later, guests report strange phenomena. Text messages sent from disconnected phones. The sound of furniture moving at 2:17 a.m. And sometimes, in the right light, a shadow in the window. Watching. Always watching. Would you like to know the worst part? The detail that keeps me awake at night? According to hotel records, Lee had been booking room 217 every weekend for 3 months before that final stay, each time bringing cleaning supplies, each time rehearsing, each time waiting. Ever notice how evidence has a way of whispering? Like breadcrumbs leading not home, but deeper into darkness. Lee's digital footprint told its own horror story, one bite at a time. His laptop revealed an obsession turned to methodology. Firefox. How long does a body take to? Chrome. Best places to dispose. Safari. China criminal extradition laws. 3 different browsers. 3 different deletion patterns. 1 dark purpose. But it was his cloud storage that truly showed the depths. Thousands of photos of Xiao, sleeping, studying, smiling with friends, their faces methodically scratched out in each image. A digital shrine built by a digital stalker. Most disturbing were the folders labeled by date. September 7th was empty. The investigation spread like ripples in dark water. First Iowa City Police, then the State Bureau, finally Interpol. Because Lee had vanished. A ghost following his own checklist, but he left traces. Always traces. Credit card records showed a pattern. September 7th, 4:13 a.m. Gas station purchase. 5:22 a.m. More gas, different station. 6:45 a.m. Cleaning supplies. 7:30 a.m. One-way ticket to Shanghai. But here's what keeps me awake. Between those purchases, cell tower pings placed his phone near 3 different rivers, each shallow enough to wade into, each deep enough to hide secrets, each still holding their mysteries. The Chinese police were surprisingly cooperative, maybe because the victim was one of their own, maybe because the evidence was too damning to ignore. They found Lee in his grandmother's house in Wenzhou, still wearing the watch Xiao had given him, still checking her social media accounts. The interrogation footage is disturbing. The 26 hours of Lee speaking in this eerily calm voice about Xiao in the present tense, as if she was still alive, as if room 217 were just another weekend getaway. Until they showed him the headboard evidence. That's when his facade cracked. Not with guilt or remorse, but with pride. He described everything. The planning, the execution, the cleanup. Like he was presenting a thesis. His masterpiece, he called it. His magnum opus of possession. But he slipped up. Started talking about the others. About how Xiao wasn't the first girl he'd followed, photographed, studied. The investigators found more folders in his cloud storage, more names, more faces, more empty folders with future dates. The hotel's surveillance footage held one final secret. In the frames from 3 a.m., there's a moment when Lee looks directly at the camera. Smiles, waves. He wanted to be seen. I wanted his work appreciated. Like all artists, he craved an audience. They found his journal, hidden in the grandmother's attic. The last entry reads, "They'll never understand. Love isn't about having. It's about making sure no one else can have what's yours. Now Xiao is mine forever, and soon others will be too." The Chinese authorities moved quickly after that, but there's something they never found. Something that still bothers those of us who work the case. Lee's phone contained a video from room 217, time-stamped 2:16 a.m. 1 minute before, everything. In it, Xiao is speaking directly to the camera. If you're watching this, I'm probably already. The video cuts off there. To this day, no one knows what she was trying to tell us. Sometimes the most terrifying part of a horror story isn't the ending. It's the echoes that follow, the ripples that never quite fade. Let me tell you about what they found in Lee's grandmother's attic and why room 217 remains empty to this day. The trial in China lasted 3 days. Just 3 days to dissect 2 years of obsession. But it was the evidence they didn't present that haunts me most. The things deemed too disturbing for public record. Remember those 3 rivers I mentioned? They dragged them all. Found nothing, but in each location, precisely arranged on the riverbank, fresh flowers, red roses, still being delivered. Weekly, even now, but Lee's been in prison for years. The grandmother's attic held more than just that journal. Hidden in the walls, they found a shrine. Photos of Xiao, yes, but also letters. Hundreds of them. Written by Lee, addressed to future victims. Each envelope dated. The last one marked 2025. But here's what broke the case wide open. Lee's computer contained a folder labeled Tutorial. Inside, a document titled The Perfect Love Story, detailing step-by-step instructions for stalking, isolating, and preserving love. It had been downloaded 47 times before police found it. The hotel management finally demolished room 217 last year. Too many complaints. Too many inexplicable phenomena. The night manager told me they kept finding things behind that headboard. Things that couldn't possibly be there. Polaroid photos, fresh ones, of empty rooms. Lee's prison interviews reveal something even more disturbing. He speaks of Xiao in the present tense. Claims she visits him nightly. Says she's happier now, preserved forever in his memory, never aging, never leaving. The psychiatrists say he's delusional. But then, how do they explain the fresh flowers in his cell every morning? Xiao's parents installed a security camera at her grave in China. Every morning, the footage shows the same thing. 2:17 a.m., static interference, then fresh flowers. No visitor visible. The timestamp never changes. Always 2:17. Last week, I received a package. Inside, a USB drive containing a single video file. The metadata shows it was created 3 days ago. It shows room 217, not as it is now, demolished and empty, but as it was that night. And there, in the corner, a figure sitting in the dark, watching, waiting, planning. But here's the detail that makes my blood run cold. The desk clerk who checked them on that final night. She swears there was something odd about Lee's reflection in the lobby mirror. Something is missing. And in every security photo from that weekend, his shadow falls wrong, as if it belongs to someone else. Lee will be eligible for parole in 2040. His grandmother's house remains empty, but neighbors report seeing lights in the attic. And that laptop, sealed in an evidence locker? Sometimes the guards hear it boot up, all by itself, always at 2:17 a.m. They say love can transcend death, but some kinds of love create death. And sometimes, if you book room 217 in any hotel, anywhere in the world, you might receive a courtesy call at 2:17 a.m., a soft voice asking if you'd like fresh towels. I'd suggest not answering.